Ted Cruz. How are you, Senator?
Mark, I'm doing terrific. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very, very well. You've got 4 states coming up: Michigan, Hawaii, Idaho. I see the governor of Mississippi just endorsed you, right?
Well, he did. Governor Phil Bryant endorsed this evening. We just did a big event here in Mississippi, and we're headed now to Michigan to do a big rally there late tonight.
You know, there's a lot of talk out there that Rubio really doesn't have a path here, and he really ought to contact your campaign, or somebody there should, and talk about joining forces and that sort of thing. What is your mindset on that, if you have one at all?
Look, I think Marco is very talented. He's a friend, and he's a terrific communicator. I do think what we're seeing happening in this race is that we're seeing Republicans uniting behind our campaign. We saw that on Super Tuesday, winning terrific wins across the country, winning in Oklahoma, winning in Alaska, winning an overwhelming victory in my home state of Texas. And then we saw it again this Saturday, on Super Saturday. The results were tremendous. We won a landslide in the state of Kansas. We won a terrific victory in Maine that nobody saw coming. In Louisiana, we tied Trump in delegates, and Trump just narrowly edged us out in the state of Kentucky. And what we're seeing, Mark, it is more and more the voters, the Republicans who recognize that Trump is not the best candidate for us. 65 to 70% of Republicans recognize if we nominate Donald Trump, he loses to Hillary Clinton, and we lose the country, we lose the Supreme Court, we lose the Bill of Rights for a generation. What we're seeing is those Republicans are uniting behind our campaign more and more. They're recognizing that the other candidates, Marco Rubio, John Kasich, they're both good people, but neither one of them has a viable path to the nomination. And our campaign is the only campaign that has repeatedly beaten Donald Trump over and over and over again, not just once or twice, but now in 7 different states we have beaten Donald Trump. And so we're seeing Republicans really coalescing and uniting behind our campaign.
Now, Michigan's the big enchilada that's up here. How do you feel you're doing there?
Well, I hope we do well. We're campaigning hard. We're working to earn support. We are surging nationally. But it really depends on who shows up and who comes out to vote. And I would encourage your listeners, if you are fed up with the corruption in Washington, if you are fed up with the stagnation of the Obama economy, if you want to see jobs and economic growth come back, then stand with us. If I'm elected president, we'll repeal every word of Obamacare. We will pass a simple flat tax and abolish the IRS. We'll rein in the EPA and the regulators that are killing small businesses. We'll stop amnesty. We'll secure the borders. And the result of all of that is that we are going to see millions of high-paying jobs created. We're going to see wages rising for the working men and women who've been getting hammered the last 7 years. And we're going to see young people coming out of school with 2, 3, 4, 5 job opportunities. That's what we can do. And let me say something also. To the folks who right now are thinking about supporting Donald Trump, I understand you're angry. I'm angry. Mark is angry. We're frustrated with Washington because Washington keeps lying to us. Politicians keep lying to us. But Donald Trump embodies everything you're angry about. Donald Trump has been part of the bipartisan corruption of Washington for 40 years. As Donald himself has said, 7 months ago, he was the establishment. He's been funding liberal Democrats for 40 years. He funded 5 of the 8 members of the Gang of 8, which was behind the massive amnesty push. And so if you want someone to stand up to Washington, don't support a liberal New York Democrat who has been funding liberal Democrats for 40 years.
And I can't even figure out what his position is now on H-1B visas. And for the audience out there, this is science, technology, engineering, math, those areas. The law says basically that if you really try and you really can't find an American citizen who qualifies for this position, then you can use this visa. He said he's opposed to it. Now he says he's for it. Now he says he's opposed to it. This is supposed to be like his big issue.
It is really amazing. You know, he has made immigration the centerpiece of his election, and yet his record on it is abysmal. As I mentioned, he funded the Gang of 8. 5 of the 8 members of the Gang of 8 he gave over $50,000 to. He had a $1 million court judgment against him for hiring illegal aliens. And even right now today, his hotel in Florida brings in hundreds of foreign workers because they won't hire Americans. And on H-1B visas, he pretended to be opposed to them, but I guess now that he's won a few states, he's thrown that overboard. And at the debate, he said he now wants to bring in lots more H-1B visas. I have pledged, if I am president, I will impose a 180-day moratorium on the H-1B program for a comprehensive audit and investigation on every company that has received those visas to make sure they're not abusing U.S. law, they're not using foreign workers to replace Americans, and we're going to go after any company that has abused the program, as there have been so many. And, you know, Mark, I'll say one of the most troubling things in this last debate was when Donald over and over again said, you have to be flexible. Now, you and I both know flexible is D.C. code word for we're getting ready to stick it to the people. Because every time Donald or anyone else is flexible, it means they're cutting a deal with Wall Street and the big corporate interests, and the people who are losing are the working men and women of this country, even on immigration, what is supposed to be a signature issue. Donald Trump went to the New York Times editorial board and told them effectively, I don't believe any of what I'm saying. I'm not going to deport the people here illegally. I'm not going to build a wall. These are just promises I'm making on the campaign trail because I think the voters are gullible enough to believe it. Now, Donald refuses to let them release that tape because he knows his own words would prove that he's not telling the truth. But I think the reason why we are surging and beating him over and over and over again is the voters can tell when someone is running a game on them, when someone's blowing smoke at them.
The Wall Street Journal editorial page hasn't been particularly kind to you. Have they endorsed you?
Not remotely.
I only raise this because they attack people like me for creating, quote-unquote, Donald Trump, and I'm thinking to myself, not only is that BS, because I had an open mind going into this and so forth, but why won't they say who they support? And it's not just the Wall Street Journal editorial page. It's others who say, we must stop Trump, we must stop Trump. I say, okay, well, why don't you make an endorsement? And so I think that they would attack you, them or others, just as aggressively, because even though you're a senator, you're the real outsider. You don't have to be an outsider physically to be an insider. But I've been trying to make the point, you're in the United States Senate duking it out with these guys. You've took a firmer stand against McConnell than anybody else, inside or outside. And this is why they really don't like you, because you are the legitimate outsider.
Well, Mark, that's exactly right. You know, you've got two candidates campaigning as outsiders. Donald Trump says he's an outsider, and he gets a lot of people in the press who are willing to parrot those words. But Donald Trump has been an insider his entire life. I mean, his father was a multimillionaire who, when he died, passed on $200 million. Donald has been supporting liberal left-wing politicians for decades. He supported Jimmy Carter over Ronald Reagan. He's given money to Harry Reid, to Chuck Schumer, to Joe Biden. He supported John Kerry over George W. Bush. And in 2008, Donald Trump gave multiple contributions to Hillary Clinton for her presidential campaign. This is the essence of a Washington insider, buying influence, and it's not influence to help the working men and women of this country. It's not influence to stop amnesty. Did he ever use the influence he claims he got to tell the Gang of Eight, who he was supporting and funding, hey, don't push for amnesty? No, he kept on writing checks. He kept on writing checks for open-border Democrats. He kept on writing checks to Democrats trying to put liberal Supreme Court justices on the court. And if you want a Washington insider who has been enmeshed in the culture of corruption, then Donald Trump is your guy. But if you want someone who not only has stood up to Washington over and over again, taken on not just Democrats, but leaders in his own party, then I am the only candidate in this race that has the record. If you want to beat Donald Trump, it is abundantly clear that there is only one campaign in a position to do that. There's only one campaign that has beaten Donald Trump over and over and over again 7 times. And so let me say to anyone listening, if you were supporting another candidate, if you were supporting Jeb Bush or Chris Christie or Carly Fiorina or Dr. Ben Carson, or if you're supporting now Marco Rubio or John Kasich, look, those are all good and honorable people. But none of them have a path to 1,237 delegates to beating Donald Trump. I ask you, join us, stand with us. If you're in Mississippi, Michigan, Idaho, or Hawaii, come out tomorrow and vote. Stand with us, and together we will win and turn the country around.